Blur is definitely a very interesting band to me. Many people know Albarn mainly for Gorillaz, but before that he was the frontman to Blur back in the 90s. The band started off with Bucky in their first album, but then became one of the main Britpop bands during the decade for pretty much the next 3 albums. You have Modern Life is Rubbish, which I think it's really good, but they wouldn't find true success until Park Life in 1994. That was around the time when they became very popular, at the very least in Britain, with many hit songs like Girls and Boys and Park Life, and also when they were rivaling Oasis, the other main Britpop band. However, Blur will go on a different path, starting with their self-title, where they will not only drift away from their Britpop sound, but they will also go on to experiment. Funnily enough, that's when they got their first actual hit in America with song 2. And they will later continue to experiment even further with the next album, 13th. Since this video is going to be primarily about this album, I thought that giving that little history lesson will be needed context for what the album has in store. 13 is not only the most experimental album that Blur has ever done, but it's actually the last with the original lineup, as Coxon will go on to leave during Think Tank. And I definitely love the experimental approach that the band does here, which I think makes for one of the band's most interesting ventures, not only in sound, not only in songwriting and production, but even in album structure, which I'll get into more detail later on. So I mentioned that the self-title was when they decided to experiment, and while I think the self-title is good, I always felt that 13 was the fully refined and complete version of it, improving but also reinventing some of the rougher spots that self-title had in my opinion. One of the main reasons for that is that I think 13 is a very creatively cohesive work. The album starts with some of the most accessible tracks on the album, in a way, yeah, typical for a band that were known for a pop sound, but I think the way they execute it here is very different. The first track, Tender, is an alternative rock song that implements a lot of gospel elements to it. This was actually a song that took a bit to grow on me fully. I didn't hate the song the first time that I listened to it, but it did kind of polarize me on their gospel approach, especially in one as meditative and mellow as this one. But the gospel elements will go on to become my favorite things about it. I describe Tender as a song that's full of passionate and joyful life to it. It's anthemic but in a rather melancholic way, and there's something about its repetitive nature that's just so enriching, like you never want it to end. Also, Albarn has always been a favorite vocalist of mine, and he definitely gives a very passionate performance here. In other words, it's a gospel alternative rock song that's kind of simple, but I guess has a certain special magic to it that makes it way better than it has any right to be. It's beautiful in its own way. The next song, Buckman, represents the more abrasive and wild moments of the album, but in a more straightforward way than the others. I love the guitar tone here. It's extremely distorted and weird, but it's taking full advantage here with the frantic energy that is present throughout the whole track. The lyrics even hint that Buckman is, well, the drug dealer of the song, which is a cool metaphor. Coffee and TV, the third track, is also a fantastic song. Out of all the songs here, this is the one that sounds the closest to their prior Britpop era, as well as being pretty much the most radio-friendly song from the album. But the song regardless still has some present elements that are alike to 13's musical style. The song is generally very chill, but also carries kind of a distant feel to it. From bits like the intro before it leads to the drums, the unusual heavy distortion throughout the instrumental break, and the ending where the song fades out and it leads to a nostalgic-like but also haunting passage at the end. By the way, this is not the first time that we'll be seeing the band do something like this on the record. Also 10 out of 10 music video. As the record goes on, the album slowly but naturally starts to become more alienated and weird. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about album structure, different to the self-title where it's pretty much a collection of experimental tracks. It's definitely one of my favorite things about it because you really do feel that slow descent into madness as the album goes on, but also because you can even see hints from it from the more straightforward tracks at the start. The album also switches back and forth between mellow and harsh for like the first 7 tracks or so. Tender is melancholic and slow, Buckman is wild, then Coffee and TV, which is a lot more toned down and chilled than Buckman, then Swamp Song, which is not as wild as Buckman, but it also tries to do more unusual things during it. The 1992, which starts as the most desolate and sad sounding song by that point, and then it leads into more haunting passages throughout the second half. Songs like this is one of the main reasons why I think they fully refined their experimentation approach in 13, because they can use it in so many creative ways, and it feels a lot more natural as well. And the way they do it still feels very much like their own unique sound. I mean, I cannot really think of many albums that did something similar to what a lot of the songs from this album did. And the album gets even weirder from this point onwards. Like the next song, which, do you remember the weirder songs from, say, Tego Meiko, or pretty much the entirety of the first Faust album? Well, this song is probably as weird as what I mentioned before. It's pretty much the weirdest, but also most surreal songs out of all the more oppressive tracks. After that, the album pretty much dissolves into mellow, slow, but also downright alien-like songs back to back. Battle, for example, starts with a chilling and atmospheric intro with a haunting melody. Yes, that is the song that I use for the intro of my channel. And then it leads into some spacey drums with that same haunting melody. Trailer Park is downright absurd with a very unusual chord progression, but also very strange harmonizations. Caramel is one of the most mellow and toned down songs, but it still has a lot of small, twisted musical ideas underneath it. By the way, remember when I mentioned Coffee and TV as a song that you think it's going to end with a fade out and it suddenly leads into another section at the end? Well, songs like these two songs do that as well. A lot of these songs in general envelop you, but also get you lost throughout its weird, adventurous soundscapes, with a lot of detail and texture and songwriting in each track that you're able to discover more with each listen. The whole album is pretty much an adventure that not only slightly hints about it at the start, and not only the album is surreal, but it definitely has a very lonely and sad feel to it as well, with songs like 1992 or No Distance Left to Run. The latter song here is definitely quite a slow burner that's incredibly heartbreaking in both the instrumentation and the lyrics. The song is mainly about Alburn's breakup with Justin Fringement, who was part of both Elastica and Suede. It's probably one of my favorite songs from the album, and its placement at the end is definitely the perfect placement for it. 13 is pretty much one of those records that you're able to find something new on it every single time you listen to it. It's Blur are their most inspired, but also their most enveloping and interesting record to date, and generally cohesive as well. With those reasons and a lot of others, is why I believe it to be their best album. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're curious to see what I thought about the new Blur album, considering that it came out like a few weeks ago, I think it's pretty good. I think it's like probably on the same level as The Magic Whip, which is decent, doesn't really have a lot of highs, but also not really a lot of bad songs on it. I think it's definitely like the appropriate direction that Blur needed to go. You know, kind of feels like a good, mature album. And, you know, Albern, as always, is a very good vocalist, and he definitely carries a lot of that charm to it. It's a good album, I liked it.